Some of you have probably come to this conference before and seen me and you're going, oh no, it's this guy's back again. And I promise you that, yes, I am back again, and I'm going to tell you some of the things I've told you before, but I'm going to tell you some completely different things. And if you were at the conference in November, I'm going to tell you different things that I told you in November. And if you were at the conference last April, I'm going to tell you different things that I told you in the conference last April, because artificial intelligence is changing and evolving that quickly. And what it means to be a startup entrepreneur building a startup in artificial intelligence has to change accordingly as well. So, there we go. So this isn't about artificial intelligence, this presentation. Artificial intelligence is here, but this is about what it means to be a startup entrepreneur in the age of artificial intelligence. And we're going to talk about three things in the course of this presentation today. One is we're going to talk about that AI's collapsed the cost of starting a business. Now, Paul alluded to some of that in his last talk about being fewer people and so forth, but it's truly collapsed the cost of starting a business. Second thing is, it's compressed the feedback loop entirely. It used to take, from the time you developed a SaaS company or a SaaS application, it may take 6 months, it may take a year, it may take 18 months before you knew if the market was going to respond favorably to that. It's not the case anymore. You can get market validation in the course of a couple of weeks and understand, are we going on the right path? Are we not going on the right path? And that is very important for another aspect of what we're going to talk about today. And the last thing is, it's fundamentally changed what it means to be too small to compete. Now, again, Paul talked about very small, many engineers, many designers have decided they're going to do startups. Well, that's what it means. It's fundamentally changed. It's become building a startup company is becoming democratized, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today too. So, let's talk about the original pitch meeting. Who were the original entrepreneurs? Well, the original first entrepreneur was Columbus, and Columbus was pitching his idea to get 3 ships and sail across the Atlantic Ocean having no idea where he's going, having no idea what he was going to find when he got there, and not having maps, not having GPS, not having anything other than a sextant to navigate on. Oh, and he couldn't communicate back to his investors in terms of how was he doing. He says, I may come back to you in 6 months. I may not come back to you at all because I may sail off the edge of the earth. I don't know, but the point is, he was the first entrepreneur. But the first venture capitalist was Queen Isabella of Spain. And Queen Isabella said, I will assume the undertaking. I am ready to pawn my jewels to defray the expenses. Now, that's a true investor. A true investor is somebody says, I'm going to put it all on the line. So Columbus, I believe in you, and I believe in you so much that I'm going to put my jewels on the line in order to make that happen. So that was the first pitch meeting, and that's what it used to like to be an entrepreneur. Let's talk about the modern founder. Now, the modern founder today is a 2-person team in Medellin building a global infrastructure. Now, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have made that statement because a 2-person team in Medellin couldn't build a global infrastructure. But today, you can. And you've got a whole new array of tools. You've got no-code tools, you've got AI co-pilots, you've got distributed teams, you've got angel capital. Many of the things that Mark and Paul talked about, you have available to you today if you want to avail yourself of them and use them. So, the fundamentals of building a company today are nothing. They've not changed, but the tools in terms of how you do it are completely unrecognizable. And those tools are different than they were 6 months ago. And those tools were different than they were a year ago, and those tools were different than they were 3 years ago. So that's how fast this is moving. Now, it always makes sense to look back at what very experienced entrepreneurs have to say about their journeys. Some of you have seen these before, some of you haven't. Jeff Bezos, Failure and invention are inseparable twins. They are. They're inseparable twins. So we're going to talk a bit about failure in a little while. Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman is an investor in AI. The entrepreneur is someone who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. True. Really is true. Bill Gates. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking that they can't lose. Success and failure, we talked about failure in the first quote, we're going to talk about success here. They're inseparable. They truly are inseparable. Elon Musk, being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. And I can tell you, having been part of building many startups, it does feel like that. Many nights you're looking at it and you go, oh shit, oh my God, why am I doing this? Am I out of my mind? Sam Altman, OpenAI. There are 1,000 times more people that have good ideas than there are people who are willing to do the kind of work it takes to turn that great idea into a great company. So, and again, many people say, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But when they look at what it really means to do it, they go, oh my God, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And they check it out. And lastly, Jason Hung. The superpower of an entrepreneur is they don't know how hard it is, and they only ask themselves, how hard can it be? Again, we learn something from all of these quotes. That's why I bothered to put them in the presentations. So what is the competency? What kind of competencies do you have to be an entrepreneur in the AI age? First of all, comfort with ambiguity. Again, we're going to talk about ambiguity, but you got to be comfortable with it because this is all ambiguous. Building networks, just what you're doing here today. Talk to the people sitting next to you. Talk to the people at the coffee break. Talk to us. That's part of building your network. And these people that are sitting next to you today that you may not have known before you walked in here today can be a big part of helping you build your company. Build your networks. People do like to work with other people. Being comfortable, wrong button. Okay. Being comfortable saying, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know. You don't have to know everything. Again, that's part of where your networks come in. They'll help you answer the questions of where you don't know. Public speaking. As an entrepreneur, you do a lot of this. If you don't like standing in front of people and talking, you probably aren't in the right field if you want to be a startup entrepreneur. And continuous learning. Now, this is the one to me that is the most important. The most important. Entrepreneurs have intellectual curiosity. They always want to know things they don't know. When somebody tells them something, they say, I didn't know that. Tell me more about that. How does that work? I'm going to go study that. I'm going to research that. I'm going to go teach myself that. I'm going to take a class in that. Continuous self-learning. And this is so true today. So true today. Because again, what we know today will be different 6 months from now. And if I stay in today's world, or if I stay in the world of 2 years ago, this is going to pass me by so fast or pass you by so fast that you're never going to know what hit you. And lastly, understanding and directing AI. AI is table stakes. If you're building a company, if you're building a technology-based company, if you're building a manufacturing company, if it's not AI, you've heard this from Mark, you heard this from Paul, if it's not AI, forget it. Forget it. You're going to be so far behind, so fast that you won't know what hit you. So AI fluency is no longer a technical skill. It's the amplifier that raises the ceiling on every other capability. So this is why this conference is so important, is to bring you this knowledge and bring you this insight from the frontier. We live at the front. We're fortunate enough in the United States, particularly those of us in Boston, to live at the frontier. So we're bringing you frontier knowledge, which you can apply in your businesses today. And that will provide you a competitive advantage that many, many people in Latin America don't have. So, what kind of founders are there? In the world of AI, there's what I call the adopters, and those are the people that are threatened, and there's the architects, and those are the people that will thrive. So what are the characteristics of each? Oops, missed the buttons. What are the characteristics of an adopter? They wait for adoption before they to become unavoidable. I'll wait. Entrepreneurs don't wait. Entrepreneurs lead. But they wait for adoption to become unavoidable. They treat AI like it was a better search engine. It's not a search engine. You heard Paul and Mark talking about that both today. It's not a search engine. It's a tool, and it's a very, very powerful tool if you know how to use it. And they use AI occasionally when somebody else shows them. If this is how you view your relationship with AI, you're an adopter, and you'd be threatened. What are the characteristics of an architect? Architects treat AI like the co-founder that never sleeps. Both, again, I keep referring back to Mark and Paul. It's easy to be the last one in the thing because I can refer back to other people. They've talked about agents being nothing more than co-founders, being virtual co-founders. They treat it like a co-founder that never sleeps. They experiment constantly with ideas in AI, and they direct the tools towards real customer problems. Super, super important. Just because you can build it doesn't mean you're solving a problem. You identify the problem before you try to build a solution, and you make sure that the problem is big enough for people to care. So they direct it towards real customer problems. So the result, if you're an adopter, is you're slower, everything is more expensive, you're going to get outcompeted. You don't have a chance as an adopter. As an architect, this is where it's really important. And let's go back to what Paul just said. A two-person team in Medellin can compete like a 20-person team did 3 years ago. So the things that were holding you back as an entrepreneur 3 years ago, saying, where am I going to get a team? How am I going to afford a team? How can I find the capital to do it? How can I do all these things? That's done. That's gone. It's history. Yet the fact is that you can compete just like a 20-person team and just like a big team in the United States or any place else in the world. So AI fluency is not about writing the code. It's about the willingness to experiment, the willingness to use it, the willingness to try things. That's what AI fluency is all about. So become architects, not adopters, as you think about building your businesses. Now, I said we were going to talk about risk. Let's talk about risk tolerance. Building a startup, it doesn't come with instructions. Evolution has taught us to look for instructions. Back in the caveman days or the Neanderthal days, the elders of the tribe taught the younger members of the tribe how to hunt, how to cook, how to stay warm, how to survive. They had instructions. When we go to school, what do the teachers do? The teachers give us instructions. This is how you do math. This is how you do language. This is how you do. Comes with instructions. When we cook, most of us, my partner Mark is an excellent cook, by the way. He doesn't do this. But most of us open a recipe book and look for a recipe and what are the ingredients and how do we put the ingredients together and how do we make a dish? Instructions are everywhere in our lives. So it's biologically, we're predisposed for instructions. Startups, they don't come with instructions, so stop looking. It's all this experiment, this trying, this networking, so forth. That's how you do it. So in the reality, in 2026, AI does not improve the ambiguity at all. It doesn't take it away. It just raises the ceiling on what a small team can accomplish with ambiguity, because you can use the tools to run experiments. You can use the tools to try things and find out that didn't work. Still risky, but it's far less risky than it used to be. Now, risk aversion is cultural. This is something I'm bringing you super important from the United States and how we build businesses in the United States. Is in Latin America, risk is considered failure. Failure carries a cultural weight. It weighs heavily. Your family criticizes you. Your friends criticize you. It may have regulatory issues, tax issues, things that are going to hold you back and say, wait a minute, I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. Well, I'm sorry. Building startups means failing. You will fail. But in the ecosystem, failure is actually considered ambition. So, believe it or not, there are investors, particularly some that we work with in the East Coast, but particularly in the West Coast, where a failed company is actually, a failed founder is actually more fundable, more investable than a founder who hasn't failed. Why? Because the investor looks at that founder and says, that person tried, that person learned something, that person is advancing. Therefore, they're not going to make the same mistakes twice. So I respect the fact that they failed. It doesn't carry any social weight. So as I said, the risk of the investment is considered lower, and failure acts as a bridge for upward momentum. So think about this. When someone is being successful, it's very easy to support them. When someone has failed, in most cultures, and particularly in Latin America and in Europe as well, it's considered social weight. It's very hard to support them. But in order to be everybody that is successful, if they're honest, they failed many times before they were successful. So that failure is a path of ambition, persistence. Persistence is the operative word in the case of risk and failure. So I understand that you're not going to change what has culturally been imposed on you all of your lives, but the fact of the matter is you need to teach yourself to be less. Don't be so hard on yourself, and don't be so hard on somebody else, because you are going to fail. Mark and I, in our 21 years together, we've had many failures. As Mark likes to say, there's companies that we started that are in boxes in his garage. It's really true. I've been in his garage. It's a mess. But there's lots of boxes in that garage. But we learned a lot from every one of those. And strangely enough, sometimes what we consider as a failure today, 5 years from now, comes back and says, wait a minute, now we know why we failed. Now we know why that's still a good idea. Let's bring it back out again. Let's apply some of these new tools and these new techniques, and we'll take it forward, and it'll be successful. And so some of the companies that we have built together and some of the companies that we've invested in are, in fact, companies that have failed and have been brought back to life again. So, the end of fail fast. Now, 2 years ago, a year ago, I told you about failing fast. And failing fast was the way that the market would teach you to fail. Fail fast is not, in the age of AI, it's not fail fast, it's pivot or perish. So you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna find things that don't work. So this goes back to the boxes in the garage. Pivot. You don't fail fast, you pivot. And you keep pivoting until you find the right answer to something. So the stakes are higher in the age of AI. 90% of AI startups fail. That's true. And that's much higher than the historical rate. But the cost of failure is much lower. So it balances out in the end. There's completely no modes of failure in the age of AI. Today, in the age of AI, things like data quality and AI moats and these kinds of things are what cause a company to fail. It's not the traditional things that used to cause the lack of capital, some of the other issues, the technical problem you ran into. Those technical problems can be encountered. It takes far less capital to start an AI company today. So different failure modes. And the new reality is pivoting is no longer recovery. Pivoting is a strategy. So every company that we have in our portfolio, whether we started it in the lab or whether it's companies we invested in, are companies that are in fact pivoting all the time, constantly pivoting, and finding new ways because the technology is evolving that fast and they're learning new things. So they're constantly pivoting. So let's talk about the game board in 2026. What's the same and what's changed? What's the same? Product market fit. Still got to have product market fit. Somebody has to still want to buy what you're selling. Cash discipline and unit economics. You know, I said it takes far less cash, and it does, but you got to be careful how you use that cash. You can't waste it. So cash discipline is important. Quality of your team and customer understanding. Again, we're only as good as the teams that we're on. There's no such thing as a team of one. So quality of your team is important, and real value. Are you delivering something to somebody that is going to make a difference? Is it something that they can see they can see a lower cost, a better quality of life, better health care? Are you doing something that has real value to it? If you don't have real value, you're done. What's the same? What's changed? Speed to value. Is the window to prove value is really compressed. Investors are far less patient than they were. So, but you have the tools to be able to do that. Moats. The moats are different than they were before. Usually today, the moats are in your data. You have unique data sets. You have small language models that are uniquely yours. That's your data is your moat. Efficiency of your capital and product evolution. Continuous data-driven evolution. Again, we talked about this earlier. So, AI is an essential engine. What is a traditional startup? What would be an old SaaS company, Ben? And what is a market-first AI native startup? Now, I'll give you a somewhat different definition for an AI native startup than Paul gave you. Sorry, Paul. No, Paul's definition was correct in the context he used it. I'm using it in a different context. An AI native startup is a startup that AI isn't just an add-on. Somebody thought about, oh, I'll throw some AI at this thing and it'll make it an AI startup. We would never touch in a company like that. We would never take a company like that through our acceleration programs. We would never invest in a company like that. We would never build a company like that. They are not sustainable. An AI native startup is a startup that uses AI at its core. It can't exist. The problem it's solving would not be solvable if it weren't using AI at the core. You can't take AI out of those startups. And those startups are not dependent upon a wrapper on a large language model that is simply going to be one product release away from Anthropic or OpenAI or Google or whoever it is. They say, oh wow, several people are doing that. I think that's great. Let's build that into our core code. Poof, your startup is gone. So an AI native startup is a startup at its core. So core engine, as I said, is tech and it's founder driven for a traditional startup. For an AI native startup, it's market driven. You're solving a problem that couldn't be otherwise solved. AI integration, as I said before, add-on or enhancement for a traditional startup. It's at the core. It's at the core of a market-first AI native startup. In a traditional startup, the teams are large and they're manual. Big teams, lots of people, lots of cost, lots of personal dependency. In an AI native startup, the teams are small and they're automated. Paul did a really good job of talking about automation of a team. They're small and they're automated. Evolution in a traditional startup is periodic and manual. In an AI native startup, it's continuous, it's data-driven, constantly evolving, constantly pivoting, constantly doing new things. And in a traditional startup, your moats are your distribution and your brand. In an AI native startup, as I said before, it's your data models. It's your proprietary data. It's the models, it's the small language models you're using and so forth. That's where your moat comes from. That's where your intellectual property comes from. That's what makes you investable. So the founders who are building AI native, or who are not building, AI native, will be completely wiped out by those who are. So again, think about that as you start to think about how am I going to build my company or how am I currently building my company. Now, this is good. Here's the good news. It may sound like I'm giving you all bad news. Here's the good news, is Latin America has an advantage because AI has become the ultimate equalizer. You can build a company in Medellin, or Santiago, or Lima, or Mexico City, or any place else and compete effectively on the world stage because of AI, all the things that we talked about. You have optimal cost and cash burn. You don't, in Latin America, you don't have a lot of, you don't have a lot of outdated habits that you have to outlearn. And in fact, you can build them you can build your new habits from scratch. You can build your new companies from scratch. So you can leapfrog. You don't have legacy problems to deal with. U.S. market access. You can reach the U.S. market through AI tools that you couldn't reach before. It doesn't mean you don't have to have people on the feet on the ground to sell, but you can use AI tools to determine where's an appropriate beachhead market, where's an appropriate value proposition. How can I work to find capital there? So the things that you would say were holding you back in Latin America no longer hold you back. In fact, quite the opposite in the world of AI, in the 2026 world of artificial intelligence. And some of the tools that you have to work with are research and discovery tools, customer sales and intelligence tools. These are all agentic tools that you have to work with that are great force multipliers for your team. Code assistance. Probably many of you work with Claude Code or Lovable or some of the other coding platforms. You can produce that's what I'm looking for. I can't think of the term I'm looking for right now. You can produce initial code. You can produce proof of concept code. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you. Proof of concept code in an hour, in days. And you can test ideas that it would have taken a coding team months and many months to build and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. You can build code today. It may not be production ready code, but you can certainly build code that gives you a good start that you can test with. Now, I missed one thing. Oh, rapid prototyping, same difference. We just talked about that. So let's explore some of the things that I have learned as a startup entrepreneur over the past 25 years as an investor. Now, many of these things you've seen before, but I'm going to update them with what's current in 2026. So, start a business, not a startup. A business has a path to profitability. Otherwise, it's a hobby. So if you're not building something that you can see a direct path to value and a direct path to profitability, it's a hobby. Don't do it. Don't do it. Second, the initial funding is going to come from you. Hard reality. But you can't start a startup on other people's money. Other people's money come only after you've proven that you're building something that the market cares about, something that is important, something that people will pay money for, something that is truly valuable, and it has enough mass to it that it becomes investable. Then you can bring other people's money into the equation. But you're going to have to find the money. Now, how do you find that money? You find it from credit cards. You find it from friends and family and fools. You find it from other places. But the money, the initial funding is going to come from you. Lesson 3, ignore the real world. I like to say it's not a place, it's an excuse for not trying. There are 1 million people in the real world that will tell you, you can't do this. Here's all the reasons why you're going to fail, particularly here in Latin America and Europe. Here's all the reasons why you're going to fail. Here's the reasons that this is a stupid idea. Muy stupido. You're going to fail. No, ignore the real world. You know, you know what you're doing. And if you're following good entrepreneurial practice and pivoting and experimenting quickly and moving quickly, then you'll know pretty quickly if, in fact, the people that supposedly in the real world know what they're talking about or don't. But there are more people that can tell you why something isn't going to work than are people that tell you why something is going to work. And the update in 2026 is AI doesn't change the need for profit. It just makes it easier and cheaper to find one. Again, this is good news in 2026. All right, two most important questions. Two more simple questions. Two questions, 4 words, but they're the hardest questions for a startup entrepreneur to answer about her or his own business. And those 2 questions are, so what, who cares? So what, who cares? Because in order to answer those questions, you have to be willing and able to look yourself in the mirror and maybe admit that your baby is ugly. And nobody wants to admit their baby is ugly. So, but you have to be able to accept that maybe you're not doing something that the world is going to care about, and you're the only one that cares. That's wonderful, but don't build a business around it, because it's probably not going to be fundable, and it's not going to be scalable, and you're not going to find the objectives that you're looking for. So those are the 2 most important questions. The question that most often reveals failure: why hasn't someone already done this? Now, if I hear a startup entrepreneur say to me, we don't have any competitors, we're the only ones that have ever tried this idea, it's the greatest idea in the world, I run the other way. Why? I don't know how many people there are in the world, 8 billion people, 8.3 billion people in the world? There's a lot of smart people in the world. And if somebody hasn't already done this that you know of, there's a reason why somebody hasn't already done this. So just accept the fact that somebody else either has done it, and you can research that and find out what they did right and what they did wrong, or that somebody is currently doing it and do the same thing. Find out what's working, find out what's not working. But if you truly believe that somebody else hasn't ever done this or isn't doing this, then you're going to fail. That's why I run the other way. So the update in 2026. Just because it uses AI is no longer a valid answer. That was a valid answer 2 years ago. People were building companies that were wrappers on ChatGPT, or wrappers on Anthropic, or wrappers on some other large language model. And that's no longer a valid reason. AI has to be built at the core. It has to use proprietary data. It has to be something that couldn't be done if, in fact, you weren't doing it using artificial intelligence. Okay, ask dumb questions. The best founders, we talked about this before, the best founders are genuinely curious. And they're really, really comfortable with not knowing things. So they're really comfortable saying, tell me more. I like to know more about this. Ask dumb questions. And don't be afraid to ask dumb questions of your investors. Don't be afraid to ask dumb questions of your potential customers. Don't be afraid to ask dumb questions of the person sitting next to you in the room here today. There's no such thing as a dumb question, because you're going to learn from it if you really ask the question and listen to the answer. Embrace risk. We talked about risk before. Embrace it. Why is it that corporations don't very often have really new innovative products? They may have tweaks on products and so forth. Apple truly doesn't have innovative products. Apple's a fast follower. Why? They let other people take the risk of that. And most of the time, the people that take the risk are the startup entrepreneurs. So the fact is, embrace the risk. That's why corporations always say, I spent so much money and I haven't gotten any return on my investment. Because they do everything they can to manage risk. Startup entrepreneurs do everything they can to embrace risk. So just really get comfortable with risk, because that's part of what you're trying to do. Failure is inevitable, but it's not a rite of passage. Learn from your successes and failures alike. We talked about failure a lot before. Assume you're going to fail. Fail quick, fail forward, pivot, learn from it, move on to the next. Fail again, learn from it, move on to the next. So failure is inevitable. And so if you're not comfortable with that, you're in the wrong room. Planning is guessing. how can you predict the future? If you can predict the future, if you really can predict the future, then you ought to start trading stocks or in a securities dealer or something, running a hedge fund or something. Planning is guessing. So the only way you really know what's going to happen is doing things. The best information comes from doing something. So now, in 2026, there's a lot of AI tools that will help you in planning, but they're still guessing. They're still guessing. Use them to guide. We talked before. Use them to identify what likely will work and what likely don't work, but don't accept that. Then you have to go into the field and try. You have to confirm that it's really going to work. But you can plan, you can guess, you can experiment much more quickly in the age of AI than you ever could before. Find a happy band of volunteers. And every company that I've ever been a part of, that we've ever built, that we've ever invested in, has a happy band of volunteers. These are people that see the founder or founders and they say, I really love what those people are doing. That's inspirational. They're solving a problem I care about. Those happy band of volunteers will help you and they'll extend your resource team. And people do that because they want to get the experience. People do that because they really believe in your mission. People do that because they want to build resume. People do that because they may want to position your company at some point in time in the future. But don't be afraid to go and find volunteers, because volunteers really make a difference. Live it or leave it. So a startup has to be what you wake up in the morning thinking about, what you go to sleep at night thinking about. What wakes you up in the middle of the night is it has to be in you. It has to be everything you're doing. So a good indication of a startup that is likely not to succeed is where somebody says, "Oh, this is my evening job. My day job is working for this corporation, or my day job is being a student." I had one young guy I mentored recently, who is looking to building a startup in cybersecurity. And he's got a team, they put a plan together and so on and so forth. And then he said the thing that really caused me to stop. He said, and starting in September, I'm going to be in Italy working on my master's degree. I'll just do this while I'm working on my master's degree. Sorry, it ain't going to work. It's not going to happen. Either live it or you don't live it. You live it or leave it. No time is no excuse. There's always enough time for everything. So if you're saying, I don't have the time, then you're not planning your time right. Or you're not prioritizing things properly. So no time is no excuse. Pick a fight. Competition is good. We talked about competition. We don't have competition. You've got competition. And you should relish competition, because competition forces you to be better. Forces you to do things that you might not otherwise do if you didn't have competition. So pick a fight. Competition is really good. Get a life. Again, I talked about you wake up in the morning, you go to sleep at night, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, but you still got to have a life. You still have to have a family. You still have to go and relax a little bit. You still have to go to the gym. If you play golf, you still have to go play golf. Find those things to do, because you'll be miserable if you don't. So make sure that you have a life. Can't be 100% of everything you do, or you'll burn out. And sales is not a department. Everybody in the company is in sales. Everybody's in sales. The CEO's in sales. The chief marketing guy's in sales. The salespeople are in sales. The accounting people are in sales. The finance people are in sales. The development people are in sales. When you're in a small company, when you're building a company, everything is selling constantly all the time. But, the tools in AI are wonderful. You can use AI to send email messages. You can use AI to do planning and so forth. But AI doesn't replace people-to-people contact, because people still buy from people. People still invest in people. So don't let AI become, I got AI, I've got an AI sales force, I've got an AI assistant, I've got an AI this. Still AI can support, but AI can't do it. Growth over profits, at least initially. Now, this is a very American thing, is American investors are more concerned about you growing the company and improving the valuation in the company than they are about you getting to profitability quickly. Doesn't say that you don't worry about profitability, but if you really want to build a company that you're going to see a liquidity event someday, not just a lifestyle business, then you've got to focus on growing the company, getting the top line of the company up. The bottom line will take care of itself eventually. And listen to the no's. Startup success comes from people saying no. No, thank you. No, I'm not interested. No, I don't think that'll work. Well, all those no's are super important information. Don't just say, person's stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. Listen to the no's and see what the no's are telling you, because they're telling you something. People are telling you something by saying no. And I know this is really hard in Latin America because working here as much as I do, the culture here is not to say yes and not to say no. So you can find more ways to not say yes and not say no than any other culture in the world that I've ever worked in before. But get to the no. A fast no is better than a slow maybe any day of the week. So get to the no's. Push them to give you an answer. So the AI era, it's all up to you now. It's really up to you. It's changed a lot what it means to build a business. It's removed what it's really done is remove the excuses for not trying. So it really is up to you. So the leverage is in your hands now. You got to decide what you want to do with it. So, and in conclusion, always remember, you're not the artist in a startup business. You're the art. Thank you.